All righty, everybody. Ooh, this is going to be a fun one. So, I recently had the privilege of meeting Rachel Lee, a brand strategist who I was connected to by Jeff Sarah. So, shout out to Jeff. And instantly vibed. Not because she loves pink, because anybody who knows me knows I don't love pink, but because she's a real one. She showed up authentic. Her vibe was just genuine and open, and it just made me so curious and wanting to know more. So I am wicked excited to introduce and get to know Miss Rachel Lee. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I just get to hang out with you for an hour. Just ask me anything. I am super excited to share and just have a good time with you today.
Yeah, well, I am somebody who likes to ask questions, so be ready. But I think my first question, and I alluded to it, so what draws you to the color pink?
Mm, that's a fun story, actually, because growing up as a kid, I hated the color pink. I was a tomboy growing up, and I always associated the color pink with girls. And from my experience, girls were no fun to play with. They were scared of everything. They couldn't pick up bugs. They were scared of getting dirty. Like I couldn't chase them around the playground. And so I always associated the color pink with being feminine and being the not so fun person to hang out with. And it's funny that I it took me a really long time to get to this place where I am today, where I've come to understand that no, the color pink actually encompasses a lot of the bright and bubbly energy that I have. And this is what people have told me, okay? Like people just tell me that that's the energy that I have. And it took a lot of me asking myself, well, are there some certain parts of myself that I know that actually exist, but I haven't allowed myself to fully embrace? And the color pink actually reflects that. Yeah, like underneath the tomboy, where I'm like this small girl that always tried to prove myself to be like, I'm really tough, I'm strong, like, yeah, I can arm wrestle all the guys. Like underneath that tough demeanor that I put up to protect myself, just being like a really small petite female, was the fact that like yeah, I am sensitive. I am super squishy. Like it's very easy to make me cry. And there is like a soft underbelly underneath like that spiky shell. And I feel like the color pink really helps capture that. And that's why I use the colors pink and black, both of those together to showcase this is what my brand is. The black is there's the side of it that is totally cool. It's badass. But then the pink is there is the soft squishy side of it, and I've used both of those colors in duality to communicate both sides of the coin of what my personality is.
That is such a beautiful explanation as to why you like pink and how you kind of started to embrace it. Thank you so much. I just aligned so much with that because my power color is black, and yet strategically I chose purples and greens on my website because they represent spirituality and a deeper
Mm,
underpinning of yourself. And so the fact that you have a story to tell is pretty powerful. So, yes, yes. Okay.
absolutely.
So, brand strategist, right? We hear that a lot. Tell me what
Mm.
that means to you specifically.
I like that question. And it's true. You hear the term brand strategist being thrown around a lot. And before I go into what that means to me, I'm going to explain what a brand is because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about that where most people, when I say the word brand, they're like, ah, logo, ah, pretty stuff, right? Like that's usually the first stuff that comes to mind. And yes, like a brand that is part of a brand, but what a brand is actually an identity. All the pretty stuff that you see is just the way that we communicate it. It's one of the many ways that we communicate about that identity. And it just happens to be the most visually appealing part of it. So that's why people get sucked into branding. So when I say branding, I'm talking about identity here. And when I say brand strategist, for me anyway, I see my role as um, somebody who helps people get clear on what their brand identity is, like asking the big question of what is your brand? And because I do personal branding specifically, it's asking the question of who are you and how do you want the world to see you? It's a deceptively simple question, but it takes a lot to answer that question. And the strategy side of what I do is asking really good questions, pulling out those answers out of some places that might feel really uncomfortable to form this bigger picture and getting clear about, well, what are we trying to communicate to the world about who you are? And then all of the pretty stuff comes after that, right? Like, how do we translate that? How do we show that online in a way that other people understand? But from a brand strategy standpoint, it's just about helping people get clear on who are they, what do they stand for, and how do we communicate that with the world? Simply put as I can make it.
That's a great explanation, and it's interesting because I never did brand strategy, but I knew that skulls were a non-negotiable, and I knew that I'm fierce, I'm bold, and I'm unapologetic, and so it was inevitable that most of my content came out looking that way. But
Yeah.
interestingly enough, I got a lot of pushback. I still get pushback on being an addiction and mental health recovery coach with a skull for a logo. So, how do you help create a brand that is very individualized for people and yet is able to meet the needs of the people that person is trying to reach?
Mm. I think it definitely goes down to two pieces. One is who are you? And depending on what your vibe is, what you're trying to communicate, there are certain ways that we can visually capture that. That's one side of the equation. And the other side is, well, who are you looking to attract? Because the people who have an issue with your skulls, maybe they're not the people who get you and who would enjoy working together with you. Maybe they're people that you wouldn't enjoy working together with just because they don't get it. So I know that when it comes to branding, a lot of people focus on presenting your brand in a way that attracts the right people. But when you attract a certain group of people, you're also intentionally excluding the people who aren't the right fit. And that isn't a bad thing. If your brand appeals to everybody, which is actually technically impossible, your brand can't absolutely appeal to everyone. But if in the case that it does, there's something wrong with it because the whole point of a brand is showing the world this is who I am, this is what I'm about, and this is who I stand for, and this is my tribe of people and it will be attractive to the people who belong in that circle and it will be absolutely repulsive to everyone else who belongs outside of it. So I would actually frame that as a positive thing. The fact that there are some people who reacted strongly to the visuals that you use, it just means that they're not the right fit for you. And honestly, stay clear, you have dodged a bullet there. But to answer your question, when it comes to how to capture that and how to represent that, I feel like for every person, there's a different formula. And that's why we have to do a lot of digging. And when I do strategy work with my clients, for example, I ask them, I'm like, okay, tell me about you. What's your personality? What do you like on a bad day? How do you like to dress? What's your vibe? Like what's your favorite character? What do you like about them? Let's like and like really try to stitch together a picture. And then usually as I get that information, I I have these pieces. Usually, like I'm a visual person, so I immediately have these things that pop up in my head of like, oh yeah, like maybe for you it's like the skull, like a skull would be really good to represent like some of those themes that I see coming up in this conversation. And sometimes it's colors, sometimes it's specific fonts, sometimes it's a certain type of graphic. So I'd say every person is different, but the most important thing is that I get an accurate reading on like the vibe of that person's brand. And if they're closed off, the brand is going to look as bland as that conversation. I don't know how, there's no nice way of saying it, but the visuals are just a reflection of whatever personality I get from that conversation. And for some people, it's stronger. For some people, it's a lot. Um, it's I don't want to say washed out. It's more it's more common,
Muted.
I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, muted. Yeah, that's the right word. So every person is different, but absolutely everyone, there is a formula for it, and you just have to lean in and be open to discovering what that is.
Yeah, something I really like that you highlighted, and as somebody who coaches people to that as well, is our brand isn't for everybody and it's not meant to be. And it's really important, I think, for somebody in your position to be really confident in yourself, to be able to, one, represent that for yourself so that way you attract that in your clients. And then two, really convey that message in a meaningful way so that the people you're working with recognize that. Um, and so my question for you is, let's talk a little bit about who Rachel Lee is to have gotten you to, business owner and brand strategist. Have you
Yeah.
always been this confident, spunky, petite, soft, squishy badass?
Oh gosh, if I were to wind back the clock, you would see a completely different person. I think all of us were like pre-business and post-business is two totally different people. I'd say business itself is like a huge personal development journey. It's not for the faint of heart. You grow a really tough skin doing this. And before this, like I honestly didn't even think that I was gonna start a business. I have never had an entrepreneurial bone in my body growing up. I was the art kid. I was the kid that loved to doodle in class, doodle all over my exam paper. Um, Science and math was not really my strongest suit, and I just love making things. Like that was the kid that I was growing up, and I just wanted to make things for a living. It was as simple as that. And when I didn't feel joyful and fulfilled at my full-time job, I naturally started to seek other opportunities elsewhere to make a living doing what I loved. And thankfully, because I work in a creative profession, it's easy to take on projects. You can go on Craigslist or wherever and just like pick up small projects here and there. And that was the breadcrumb trail that led me to doing first part-time freelancing work, then full-time freelancing. And then before you knew it, I'm like, wait a minute, like, is this what it's like to run a business? Before I knew it, like I had become this thing called a business owner, which I didn't even know what that actually meant. I didn't understand the gravity of like there's a lot of responsibility that's attached to this. Oh my gosh, I have to be tough. I have to put my foot down and uphold my boundaries. And like there's a lot of other bells and whistles that are attached to being a business owner that have helped shape me to become the person I am. But yeah, I was a really shy kid growing up. I didn't talk very loud. I was never the popular kid. I always hung out in the art room, doodling in doodling in my corner. And I have a small group of friends around me, but I would never say that I was the loud person. I'm like, I can get loud if you get to know me, but it has never been a part of my identity. And I would say, even not until now, like I call myself a social introvert. Like probably after this interview, I'm gonna curl up on the couch, stare at the ceiling, and then just recharge my social battery for for like at least 30 minutes. Like that's usually what it's like. But yeah, I definitely wasn't always like this, but I also feel that this isn't the final evolution, and I'm excited to see who I become next year and the year after that and the year after that.
I I really appreciate that vulnerability and saying, even after this interview, you need to take time to pause, to recharge. I'm curious,
Yeah.
you mentioned that as a kid you were really into art and you were always very creative and expressive. Did you have a supportive community, i.e. family, friends, people who kind of fostered your love of what you do? Because it's clear you've been doing it for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm actually very thankful to say that despite growing up in an Asian household where they tend to be more strict when it comes to the arts, I'm thankful that my parents actually encouraged me to pursue my hobbies. And I would actually say, even though both of my parents, they don't work in the creative field. Like my dad has a background in chemistry and engineering. My mom worked at a law firm. You can understand the kind of structure that I grew up with. It was stable as stable can be. And I like to think that a lot of my creativity and a lot of the way that I see the world, it actually came from observing my dad growing up because engineers are problem solvers and they also make things. It doesn't look artistic per se, but whenever like growing up we had something at home that didn't work, something broke, or maybe we were too poor to afford something. Every time we came across that situation, my dad would be like, ah, I can make that. We don't have to go to the store and buy it. And then I would just watch him like make something out of just like the pile of wood, right? And there was something magical about that process of being like, I can make anything happen if I put my mind to it. There's something magical about that that I probably absorbed as a kid. It's just it came out differently in the more artistic ways where art for me growing up, it was a way for me to express my emotions. I feel like, especially as a quiet kid, where I didn't like talking about my emotions, I didn't have the right words for it. So I expressed it in art. And that was my form of problem solving and working through all of the confusing feelings I went through as I went through puberty. And, you know, as you get older, it became a problem solving tool for me that I eventually realized, hey, I want to do this for a living, but use it to help other people. So I studied design in school, and that sort of led me to where I am today. But I'm very thankful to say that I had the support from my parents. They're like, go study art school, go do go go do the thing that you want to do for a living. As long as you're able to take care of yourself and you're happy, we're good with that. So I'm thankful that that's the family that I grew up with.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I got to ask, have you ever told your dad, hey, dad, did you know I think I got some of my stuff from you?
I did actually. I think it was in one of the more recent Father's Days. I love writing letters. It's just one of, and I'm the person that like I'm terrible with buying gifts, but I'm great at making them. So every time it's like someone's birthday, like I like to write them a letter and just tell them very honestly how I feel about them, how thankful I am. And I think in one of the more recent Father's Days that passed, I definitely wrote down in a letter something along the lines of like, hey dad, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but a lot of the things that I do today, I won't be able to do if it weren't for your support and just watching you like be the problem solving hero that I needed you to be growing up. And yeah, like it's very rare that I see my parents tear up or cry, but that was one of those moments. And I think it's just cool to see that from your parents where we definitely had a shared moment. And I think it's important when you let someone know how much their actions have impacted you in a positive way. Like that is the ultimate gift.
Yeah, and it's so I love so much that you shared that you love letter writing because I think it is a lost art and an
Yeah.
opportunity to really highlight, much like you said, the impact that people have on our lives and how we show up. And the fact that you were able to encapsulate that in a way that your father was able to receive is amazing. I
Yeah.
honor you because it that's a form of vulnerability. I recognize that you know came from a supportive family, but I think even then too often we kind of just assume people know how we feel and we just let it ride, and that's
Yeah.
a missed opportunity to build a deeper connection with people.
Exactly. Exactly. And I feel like especially though, like communicating with parents, it's a learned skill that takes practice over time. And there were so many moments though where like I miscommunicated or they didn't know the right words to get through to me. And we butted heads so many times. So I'd say it's a learned skill. That skill requires practice. But it definitely takes two for it to work. And thankfully, like I think both me and my parents, like we've done a lot of work over the years to improve the way that we communicate with each other. So we've been on a journey. I'm happy to say we're at the better end of it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I'm listening to you talk and you're highly emotionally intelligent, right? You have a really strong sense of self and awareness. Have you mentioned you were shy, and you mentioned that your art was kind of like that creative outlet. How were you able to then learn to put words to your emotions, or words to how you were feeling, so that you could communicate it not just in a creative
Mm.
way visually, but also in a verbal way, so that way you can really get your needs met? Because, as a mental health coach, that's the thing that's important for me.
Absolutely. I'd say that it was a mix of going to art school where I mean, it sounds fun. Art school was fun, but they put art kids through this regiment every time you go to class where it's mostly project based. We didn't have a lot of assignments or papers or exams. We basically ran everything through projects. And the way that we learned and got feedback was every class you would go and present your project at whatever state that it's in, and then the whole class would take a look at it, and they call it critique time. I don't really like the word to this day because a lot of tears were shed. But basically, like the whole class would take a look at your work and give you constructive feedback on what they thought that you could be doing better. And that was I call it the dojo, where I very quickly learned, oh, it's not just enough to have a pretty looking thing. I need to be able to communicate about, well, why did I make this color choice? Why did I have this specific layout? Like, to be able to communicate about what I created and to explain to people, this is what it's supposed to mean. Here's what I was trying to say. So that was sort of the dojo when I was in university and figuring out how to do that, even just in like a learning setting. But then I feel like where it really started to matter was when I started to take on my own projects. At first, it was just freelance, and then it was full time. But communicating about art, visual stuff to people in art school, that's one thing. We're all visual people, so even if you explain it terribly, okay, whatever, like we get it. But when you start to work with clients in the real world, they're hiring you because they don't have a design background. They don't do the visual stuff. And you have to really learn how to use your language to communicate about something visual to somebody who has zero background in that, and then be able to properly explain to them, okay, well, this is what I've created, and here's what it was meant to communicate. And then also be able to ask for feedback, because at the end of the day, the difference between art and design is a visual solution to a problem. It's about helping somebody communicate. It's a very functional thing. Art is about self-expression, and sometimes if you don't have words to explain it, whatever, that's totally fine. It's just your feeling. So design and working with real life clients really trained me to use words to communicate. And there are still days where I find like, oh geez, like how the hell do I explain this? Like it, it takes constant practice. And there are still days where I find myself getting tripped up, because the reason why it's visual is because some of that can't be communicated with words. It's just a different form of communication. It takes practice for sure, but over time, if you practice it enough, it's like a different language that you learn to develop over time.
Yeah. And you do it so well. So I really want to highlight that. So you
Thank you.
mentioned, and I am a business owner, so you don't have to explain to me, but stepping into business after having worked for somebody else and kind of having the foundation already laid for you is not for the faint of heart. And so talk to me about your experience in going into business for yourself. You mentioned that you started freelancing, and then you took it on part-time. So there was a slow evolution, but I can't imagine it was any easier just because you stepped in to the pool one toe at a time, so to speak.
Yeah, honestly, in hindsight, I also feel like I made the jump into full-time entrepreneurship way too early. It was definitely premature. I just got impatient because I was so unhappy at my full-time job that I just couldn't wait. I decided to pull the trigger. And if I were to reflect on the first year of business, it was a hot mess. It was it was really painfully challenging because I realized that I committed to something that I have literally no knowledge of. Like they don't teach art kids anything about business in art school. Um, and there were a lot of things that became glaringly obvious to me that I needed to figure out if I was to be able to keep my head above water. Because all I thought before was, oh, I just need to be good at this thing and magically there's going to be people who show up and who want to hire me for my stuff. I had no conception of the fact that like, oh geez, like I need to market myself. I need to create my own brand. Oh geez, like sales. Oh God, I have to learn sales. And then, oh, what about bookkeeping? And then like, oh, I need contracts and paperwork. Like, you should have seen the mess that it was. I made so many mistakes in my first year of business where I had people ghost me and then I didn't have paperwork. So then I had to like call them with a different number and then pretend to be a lawyer to chase them for money. There was a lot of mess that happened in the first year of business. I'd say that it built character though, and it very quickly taught me the importance of setting firm boundaries, understanding the value that I bring to the table, not taking things personally when somebody says no. I think that these are things that I definitely learned in the first year of business. One thing though that I really wish that I had was a support group or at least a mentor that I could lean on at least to show me the rough path of where I should be going. It was like the Wild West in the first year because I didn't have any of that. So I just leaned on the few of my friends that I had at that time who were also self-employed or freelancing. But honestly, in hindsight, none of us really knew what we were doing. So it was terrifying, but I don't think I could have done it any other way. It's like you do it and do it messy, but still do it.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I went into business having run businesses for 24 years and it was still a shit show. I think that no matter how you slice it, it's incredibly rare for somebody to execute on all four cylinders right off the rip because
Yeah.
there's so many variables that you can't factor in. And there is something to be said about having a mentor or somebody who can at least hold your hand through the fire, so to speak, because you're right. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of days of bumping your head up against the wall saying, what the hell did I just get into? And
Yeah.
yet, on the back end of it, it builds this unwavering and unshakable faith in yourself that if you can move through some of those experiences and still come out on top, then really your ability to expand and grow as a business owner, as a human, in any real facet of your life like you just have that trust in yourself.
Absolutely. And it's about making the jump before you're ready because you will absolutely never, ever feel ready. You will never feel qualified. You become qualified in the process of doing the thing. And that's what I realized. And it's been a journey of overcoming my perfectionistic tendencies where, like, growing up, I was the kid who would never apply for a job because I was so scared of getting rejected that I would only apply if I was directly referred and told that I was already accepted. I just needed to submit my resume, like for formality's sake. Like I was so scared of not making the cut, of getting rejected, of being told no, that in hindsight, I'm like, holy crap, like, yeah, I was there, not in hindsight, like, not actually that long ago, but the business teaches you how to work on all of those parts. And if you're going to be a perfectionist and if you want to hang on to your perfectionistic tendencies, I'm sorry, the business is not going to work for you because you can't do business clean. Like it's going to have to be messy. You have to test things. You'll never know if it works until you just do it. And there's been many moments where I've had to let go of my pride and my ego and just do it, even if I felt completely uncomfortable. But that's where a lot of the growth has happened. And I don't think I would have done it any other way.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that well, pride and ego are they inhibit anybody in any area of their life, right? Because it prevents them from recognizing that there's another way, there's support, there's a new perspective, and so being a business owner is absolutely one of the most humbling experiences I've had outside of parenting. So
Yeah.
what is your ideal client? Like, if I said, this is the person I'm going to hand you and you're going to be able to create magic with that person, what would that person look like?
Oh, all right. So in terms of criteria, they have to be heart-centered and impact-driven. Like before anything else, like it is so important that this person is looking to make a positive change on this planet. That is like my number one criteria. The second criteria is most of the people that I work with are either speakers, influencers, or I'll say budding thought leaders. These people are amazing at what they do. They have so much experience and so much value to offer. And they're at that stage where they really want to put themselves out there and share all of the goodness that they have with the world. And not for clout. I definitely have to say, when it comes to personal branding, these people are not looking to build a personal brand to get rich and famous. I feel like, yes, maybe those things might come, but their primary intention for building a platform for themselves online is to spread their impact, put their message out there into the world, and make it a better place. And they just know that they need to become more visible in order to do that. So I would say, yes, you got to be impact driven. You have to be heart centered. And ideally, you're further along enough in your journey where you have something amazing to offer to the world. Maybe you've had your business for 20 years, and oh my gosh, in those 20 years, you've racked up so much that you're like, oh, if only the world knew. Like, I would love to bottle this up, and like, I'd love to get on stages and share about my experience, keep people from following those same mistakes, share my story, inspire other people to also like start their journey. They're at that stage where they just really want to put themselves out there and be seen and also accepted for who they are. So I would say that's sort of my ideal client. You don't have to be rich, famous, or smoking hot in order to have a personal brand. You just need to have a message to share, a willingness to put yourself out there and be seen, and a deep desire to make impact on this planet. So that's sort of the type of person that I love working together with. And you have to have a sense of humor. You have to be fun. I'm sorry, I can't work with people who can't take a joke, or who are like super straight and serious. Also, that like it's got to have to be fun working together with you.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious, how have you always been a heart-centered person? Like, how did you land on that clarity for yourself to be so aware of the person that you want to work with?
Mm, I think it because I've met a lot of people throughout the course of my journey that I didn't enjoy the experience of working together with them, of networking. And, like you meet all sorts of people as you do this thing called business. And I came to realize, ooh, like there are certain types of people that I just don't get along with. And as I was looking at the patterns, I came to see, oh, these are the people who, I mean, there's nothing wrong with starting a business just to make money. Like, yeah, the world needs businesses to provide services and create products. But I think business for me anyway, like my personal reason for doing business is this is my vehicle for change on the planet. This is my vehicle to make myself a better person. I honestly see it as that. It's a personal development vehicle more than it is a business for me. I see it as an opportunity to serve other people with the skills that I have. And I just love working together with people who resonate with those same values. And I just feel like there's a lot less for us to talk about if it's just like, how can you help me increase my ROI? Right? Like, how can like it's just it's a flat conversation. And when it comes to branding, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in making up like some deep heartfelt story that's going to help you market stuff. I am not here to bullshit. I'm not here to make something up that doesn't exist. I'm here to work with real people who are trying to make a difference and who just need help communicating that in a better way. I'm not here to fabricate something that doesn't already exist, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's really well said, and I appreciate that clarity. And I agree. Well, I can work alongside of anybody. I It's really important for me that people recognize that we are all connected and that we all impact each other. And if our lens isn't showing up in service to somebody else in a meaningful way, whatever that looks like, then
Mm,
it's not that I don't want to work with you, but it's a harder connection for me to make, So
yeah,
one last question
absolutely.
before I ask you if you have anything you want to share. How did you come up with your hat? So did you create that hat?
Oh, I get this question a lot. I feel like the funny thing is I just got this hat online. It's my Munchies hat. You can see it says the Munchies and it
That
says
is so
donut.
funny.
And there's like a little bite in the corner.
Bites.
And I just
Yes.
I wear it to every call in part because sometimes I just have a really bad hair day. I just need to put something on top of my head to make it manageable. But I feel like part of the allure is like it automatically makes the conversation casual. I think when people do networking, like there seems to be this pressure to be this important somebody, and I want to make it feel like just like we're just hanging out here. Like, can we just chill? So I sometimes I like to wear the hat just to immediately make the conversation more chill. But yeah, I just found this hat online. It's off of an online site called Temu, where there's just a lot of small fun knickknacks on there. So yeah, I got this
Oh
hat
my
off of
God,
there, and it
Timu. I'm
somehow
gonna go on a
becomes
rant about
signature.
Timu because everybody in my house keeps sending me Timu, and I'm like,
Oh,
enough with Timu. Oh my God.
it's it's everywhere. Yeah.
It is. Well, you know what? It's so funny. So I like you. I wear, if you look at most of my interviews, I wear a lot of hats, and it's mainly because I don't want to do my hair. I have short hair, so half the time it's spiked up, and I'm like, you know what? I can make the front look cute and then just slap on a hat. So I love it. So
Exactly. It's easy.
it is so easy. What is something that you would want the community to know about you that maybe we didn't touch upon that is really important to you?
Mm. I feel like we went over a lot today. But I definitely feel like Um, the most important thing, especially with what I do in the world of personal branding, it's really easy for people to get caught up, especially when you meet someone online first. It's so easy to get caught up in like the cloud, like, oh my gosh, this person is so big and feel intimidated. And I know that at least the way that I do my best to carry myself, um, I somehow still give off this impression where they're like, "Oh my gosh, like this big person, like I can't talk to her." But I feel like the message that I want people to know is like, at the end of the day, all of these people, no matter how big they look, they're still a person, and it's important for you to remember that like there's a human behind the screen, and it's okay that you reach out. Like don't be shy, like for people who want to reach out to me, but also for people like you see somebody that you really love and respect. Yes, I know there might be certain boundaries, maybe they might not get back to you, but there is still a person behind the screen, and I think it's so important that we remember that in a day and age where we literally do all of our networking online. Most of my friends I meet are online as well, and it's so easy to run with our assumptions. So I think that might be more of a PSA, but I think that's just like a thought that I wanted to share and something that I've been reflecting on even for myself that I think needs to be said more. Right? It's just about the people. The what we see online is just the storefront, and it's so easy to make our assumptions. But I think if you actually really lean in, it's yeah, just do the connecting people to people thing, and it makes
Yeah.
the world a much smaller place.
I am very grateful that you brought that up. That's a really beautiful way to end this interview. And I'll tell you why, because something that I recognize within both you and I is we're confident. And our
Mm,
confidence creates this effect where people think that we're either unapproachable or too big for, and I think that couldn't be further from the truth from a lot of people. And so I really
mm,
love that that was what you wanted to end this interview on. I'm really grateful, particularly for my community, who there's a lot of people who struggle with mental health and addiction issues.
mm,
And whether you are in sobriety, or whether you're struggling to maintain sobriety, the reality is you're no different than Rachel and I. We are two people who show up every day. We don't have all the answers. We're literally figuring it out as we go. And I I would say like for myself, I thrive off of people reaching out because it opens up for more meaningful and deeper connections.
Absolutely. It's the thing that totally makes my day when I see a message randomly in my inbox from somebody that I don't know who just wanted to reach out and be like, hey, like I saw your stuff, like don't know if you're ever gonna see this message, but just wanted to like start up a conversation. I'm like, dude, that makes me so happy. Like it I know that there's a lot of people who hold back and it takes a lot to break the ice. Like I found myself like just intentionally reaching out to people who follow me because I know people are just being shy. I'm like, no, seriously, please don't be shy. Like if we're gonna be connected, like let's talk, right? So I love that, and I do think this is a great note for us to end the interview with.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. For anybody who's interested in just having a conversation, maybe you're not ready to create a brand or, rebrand your brand, but just if you're looking to know somebody who's genuine, authentic, who could potentially connect you with the person you're meant to know, reach out to Rachel because she's a real one. And I am so grateful for this conversation. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this, and you ask great questions. So thank you for having me today.
Oh, thank you. I tried. That's my 24 years of corporate experience and leadership.